So X3AP Prelude is an old game. You're not going to have your Steam subscribe button or your mod loaders that you do in most modern games, and it needs to be done the old-fashioned way. So this guide will cover how to install SWLU from scratch and some add-on mods such as Marine Repairs and Training and Improved Races 2 on top of that, because there have been there's been a lot of confusion for these mods especially. So please check the description. There are going to be separate separate sections in this video, from starting all the way back at your vanilla installation from Steam, installing LU, installing Star Wars LU, installing the mods, and then getting started, just making sure that it's working correctly. So first of all, let's start with how to find all of these files that I have right here. Alright, so the first thing you need is Star Wars LU itself. So this is the main ModDB page. I'm sure you already know about this if you're watching this video. You need to go to Files, and it will be the latest one. In this case, it's 1.2.8, even though I'm installing an unreleased version in this video. And this is all you need. Now, there is this weird patch right here, and it is apparently made to fix some typos or something, but this wasn't made by me. It was made by some other guy who can apparently just upload his stuff to my ModDB, but he never talks to me about what is actually in here, so I can't speak for this file. But it is here, and I can't do anything about it being uploaded to my page, but it's apparently a fix for some typos. But all you need is Star Wars LU 1.2.8, hit the download now button, and that will download it from ModDB. The next things you will need are all of these Litcube installers. Actually, let's go for the no Steam exe first. So right here, what this does is, this is Eaglesoft's Albion Prelude no Steam exe. This will allow us to create multiple copies of X3 all over your computer instead of just having the Steam copy. Because if you try to copy and paste your game files and put them somewhere else, they're still going to use Steam unless you have this. So what this does is it gives you a new executable that is DRM free, and it is completely free from the shackles of Steam. So you can put this and use this to make extra copies of X3 that you can run elsewhere. So this way you don't have to install Star Wars LU on your Steam version. You can leave your Steam X3 as normal. And the reason you want to do this is because there have been many reports from users of the mod where Steam might mess up your files. It might validate the files and delete stuff. It might update your files or try to sync something. Steam can cause all kinds of problems. And not to mention, it's always nicer to have a DRM-free copy of the game. So you need to link your Steam account with Eaglesoft, and then they will let you download this. Obviously, you have to get this from Eaglesoft because getting it elsewhere would be considered piracy. So this is optional. You can install the mods on Steam, but just know that Steam can cause all sorts of problems down the road. The next thing we need are all of these Litcube installers for Litcube's universe. So this is Litcube's main wiki. This is his website. This is where you get the installers. So on the downloads page, I'll have all these linked in the description. You need the base install, you need the patch, you need import-export package. I mean, this isn't something you really need, but you'll need it later, so it's good to install it now. You'll need the soundtrack and the GUI installer. You'll need all of that. So download all of those, and that will be all of these Red Rocket exe files. Those are installers. And something else from this website is you should save a link to this page, the features and changes, because this is documentation on all of those Litcube features, such as dock agents, MLCC, all those very advanced gameplay mechanics that LU introduces that you're not going to be able to figure out just by trying to fumble through it in game. So this is a great reference to have bookmarked if you want to actually learn how to get far in Litcube's universe. So we have everything that we need for vanilla Star Wars LU. Now, I do recommend actually running some additional mods, even on your first playthrough. Now, you don't need the big ones like Improved Races 2, although I will be covering how to install that, but satellite monitoring and probably vanilla balance are two that you definitely want to consider even on a blind first playthrough, because they are just so essential. Satellite monitoring lets you pull up it's a hotkey to pull up a menu to see all of the assets your satellites in all different sectors can see. So you can see where your satellites see abandoned ships, where there's enemies. I think anyone who's played LU will say it's a must-have. And then vanilla balance what this does is, I should have footage of it here, is without vanilla balance, as you can see, guns shoot extremely slowly. I'm holding down the fire button right now, and you can see how slowly my guns are shooting. Now this is so the massive fleet battles like this can be run without problems, because if we didn't have these slow rates of fire, the massive fleet battles wouldn't be possible, because X3 was never designed for combat on the scale that Litcube allows. And by contrast, I've made this patch for vanilla balance, and what this does is it rebalances all the lasers. It doesn't change the DPS, but it changes the rate of fire and the travel speed for them all to be very slow, and they shoot faster, just like in the base game, vanilla X3AP. And what this is it makes dogfighting a little bit more enjoyable, because with the default balance, you're not going to be able to dodge lasers. Pretty much you're only going to win fights if you outgun the enemy. You have more ships. This allows you to actually dodge lasers, and it makes firing a little bit more satisfying, since, you know, guns actually shoot when you're holding the button. It's all personal preference, but just know that with vanilla balance, as you start to get towards later periods of the game where you have more and more ships in combat, especially if you're using IR2 or some other mod that adds more ships battling each other, the game is going to have a massive performance hit from this, and the fleet battles aren't really going to work. So you're going to need to take this off eventually. But for early game dogfighting, you might find this increases the enjoyment of the combat just a little bit. Remember, X3 is not a game about combat. Okay, so where do we actually get these? The best place to look is the SWLU Discord. Now, I know not everyone wants to join the Discord, but I have a list of all of these mods here. So here we have the link. So there's a channel down here called Compatible Mods. And here we have Marine Repairs and Training. Let's go ahead and grab that one. It links us to the forum site. You hit download here, and that's how you get that. The next one is Satellite Monitoring. You click that, it takes you to the forums for here. You download this as well. And then two other ones that you have to get from the Discord is Vanilla Balance. This is the Vanilla Balance. Just hit the download here, and it will download that patch. And the other one is the big mod called Improved Races 2. And what this does is it lets the player claim sectors and NPCs fight over sectors, and it makes the universe much more chaotic as all the factions start fighting each other properly. That doesn't happen unless you have the mod. So there is a channel called Downloads Improved Races 2 project. There is a forum link here that lets you read about the mod. So this was a mod not designed for Litcube's universe, but this is the features for the mod if you want to read about it. But to actually download it, you need this IR2 SWLU edition. So hit the download right here from Discord, and that is where you're going to get it from. Okay, so now that we have all the mods, it's time for part 2 of this video, creating a separate X3 install from Steam. Alright, this part is optional. Now remember, you can use your Steam copy of the game to mod into Litcube's universe and all that, but I highly discourage it for many reasons. But let's first make sure that our Steam version is even the right version before we begin. So we need to go to Manage My DLCs and make sure that the X3AP bonus package is disabled, because that is not compatible with Litcube's universe. So now that that is done, let's go to our Steam files. So that is this directory right here. C, Program Files, Steam, Steam Apps Common, and that is the default. If you have it elsewhere, you know where that is. This folder right here, X3 Terran Conflict. This is Albion Prelude. Now I know the game is not called Terran Conflict, that's a separate game, but if you look at an add-on and it goes up to 0.4.dat, then it is Albion Prelude. So this is what we need. Let's copy this. And I've already pasted it onto my desktop. That's this folder right here. So go ahead and copy that entire folder to your desktop. So what this is doing is we're taking a separate copy of the game to make our modded one, with leaving the Steam one untouched. So that way, if you don't like the mods or you want to get rid of them, you can just go back to Steam and run that copy and just delete your modded game. Because you can't uninstall these mods. The only way to do that is to just delete the whole game and reinstall from scratch. Okay, so let's get the no Steam exe that we got from Egosoft. Here it is. Let's open our copy Terran Conflict folder. So here is the DRM infested Steam executable. Let's get rid of that. And let's take this and put it in here. So Where's my paste button? Okay, so here, now we have the no Steam executable. So, congratulations, your game is now DRM free. So, we can use this executable, just click it like normal to launch the game straight out of the folder. And we're no longer affiliated with Steam. So, now we're going to install Litcube's Universe. Now remember, we could have done this just using the Steam copy, so for the next part, if you're planning to use Steam, use the X3 Terran conflict folder in your Steam folder, but I highly recommend doing this instead. So now that we have a copy of the game to work with, let's go ahead and install Litcube's Universe onto it. So first I'm going to make a folder called SWLU Mod, and this is where it's going to be installed. So I'm going to put Terran Conflict in there. That's the name of the folder, not the game. And let's go ahead and run these Litcube installers. Now they need to be run in this order. Litcube's Universe 1.7.1, and then the patch, and then the soundtrack, and then the GUI, and then the EI module. So when you run the installer, it's going to ask you where you want to install Litcube. So we need to find our Terran Conflict folder. So on our desktop, we have a folder called SWLU Mod X3 Terran Conflict. This is it right here. So that is what Litcube needs to find. Now this is the GUI. We're going to install this with its own installer later, so we'll leave that on default and then hit install. So it is installing to our SWLU Mod X3 Terran Conflict. And if you're using your Steam version, again, you can do that. Just point to your Steam Apps Common, that folder. Okay, the first one's just about done. So the one that we just ran was the Litcube's Universe 1.7.1. Finish. All right, let's delete that. So the next one you need to do is the patch Litcube's Universe 1.7.2. It should, let's run the installer. It should retain our path from before. Yep, X3 Terran Conflict and SWLU Mod install. That one's quick. Next one is the soundtrack. Let's go ahead and launch this one. This one's quick as well. Install, it keeps the old location. Okay, soundtrack is finished. Next step is GUI. Now before we do this, let's actually decide on the one we want. So I have this linked, but this is back to Litcube's wiki. On the GUI page, there's two different styles. There's Litcube and there's TrixX, and they have different colors. Now the difference between Litcube and TrixX is their icons look a little bit different, and I think the font is different, but let's pick one of these colors. You definitely don't want a bright one, but for the sake of it, I'm going to pick Topaz because it's obnoxious and it will clearly show that I've demonstrated the correct GUI install. So let's run the installer again. And let's pick Topaz. See, here's all the TrixX ones you can pick. Just pick your favorite. Now you can run this, you can save this installer and run it again, even after SWLU is installed, to change your UI if you don't like what you chose. So let's install that. Okay, we're gonna hold on to this one. And then EI, which is the import-export module. I'll go into that later, maybe in a different video, but that is a tool to fix save games. Okay, that's done. So now, if we look in our SWLU mod folder, we have in our add-on, remember it only went to 0.4, now it goes up to 0.9. So now we have Litcube's Universe installed. So let's go ahead and launch the game real quick to test it. So let's click on this and launch the game. When you're verifying that you installed Litcube before moving on to SWLU, you'll see that the launcher says Litcube's Universe right at the top. That's the first hint that you've done it right. Now when you launch it, there will be a pop-up that says incorrect exe version. That's just because we're using the no Steam executable. Just hit yes, ignore it. But this is the Litcube main menu, and you'll see all these damn yeah game starts. This is correct. Litcube's Universe is installed. Perfect. Okay, now that LU is installed, let's move on to SWLU. So let's go back to this root folder. Now this is what we got from ModDB right here, and all I've done is extracted it. So it will look like this. You'll have the install instructions, so everything I'm doing but just written. Additional files, this is just extra documentation, such as the map, but this isn't actually the mod itself. This X3 Terran conflict folder is SWLU. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag it into the same directory as our game's Terran conflict, not into the folder. This is bad, don't do that. You want to move it next to it. and it will ask you to replace like many different files. That's because we're replacing a lot of Litcube files with Star Wars stuff. So this might take a while, or not. And now we should have, if we go into Terran Conflict add-on, we should go all the way to 14.cat and dat. The cat and dats contain all the game files that the mods add. So if we are to launch the game now, our main menu should look like this. So here's the loading screen, and here is the main menu. And if you look in the bottom, you have Star Wars SWLU 1.2.9, or whatever version, because I'm sure I won't update this guide ever again. But this is correct. If we hit new game, you'll see all the Star Wars game starts. But we're not quite done yet. Remember, we need to actually install those must-have mods. So let's go ahead and do that. Now that we've installed Star Wars SWLU, I'm going to delete this. You might want to hang on to it for those additional files that were included. But first, now this is important. If you've played X3 in the past, you're going to have conflicting save games. Obviously, you can't load up a vanilla save in Star Wars SWLU, and vanilla preferences might mess up Litcube. So what we need to do is make a new folder for the saves. So Documents Egosoft is where X3 keeps its save files, and unfortunately it's shared between all of your installs. So remember, the Steam version, if you launch Steam, it's going to try and use the folder in here called X3AP. And if you try to launch your Star Wars version, it's going to use that same folder. So what I do is, when I'm ready to launch Star Wars SWLU, I rename this back to X3AP. And then, so what it does is, when you run any version of X3, it is going to use the folder in here called X3AP. Anything that's named something else is not going to be, it's going to be ignored. And if you look in here, this is all of your save files. It's where your controls are set, all that. You want to keep this, you don't want to launch any other game, like install, like you don't want to run vanilla Litcube, you don't want to run vanilla X3AP using your Star Wars SWLU X3AP folder. And you're not going to have this the first time. So if you have no folder in here called X3AP, when you launch Star Wars SWLU, it's going to generate one, and that will become your new folder. And if you don't plan to play any other version of X3, that's perfectly fine. But so what I'm saying is, check this folder. If you already have a folder in here called X3AP, you need to rename that, because that's your old vanilla game or whatever you were playing before you found this mod. Or it's just back when you were testing to see when Litcube was installed correctly. You need to rename that to something else, like I've done here, and leave it blank. So we'll let Star Wars SWLU generate its own folder, and we'll use that one from now on. You don't have to come back to this if you're not dealing with multiple versions of the game, like if you're not playing Mayhem or other mods at the same time. But just know that you have to manually manage your save games so that you don't load another installs X3AP folder. Remember, just leave not any of them named X3AP, or just leave this entire folder deleted if it's your very first time, and then you never have to look in here again. Okay, with that out of the way, let's move on to these mods. So satellite monitoring and maybe vanilla balance are ones that you want to run on your first game. Remember, vanilla balance is that laser speed and rate of fire adjustment. So let's extract all of these. Let me just get them from my other desktop. Okay, we can delete these. So these are the extracted folders. So satellite monitoring, this is the must-have mod. So let's go ahead and install it. So this is what is extracted add-on. So that is referring to, so in Star Wars SWLU mod, this add-on folder. So we're going to drag this into here. Now remember, we don't want to drag it into any of these folders. That will not work. You want to move it to X3 Terran Conflict and replace the files. Okay, so satellite monitoring is installed. Once you're in the game, there will be a hotkey that shows up for that. Okay, the next one is vanilla balance. And this one has an X3 Terran Conflict folder in it, so we can go back up here and drag the X3 Terran Conflict here. Now remember, this one, unless the dogfighting bothers you without it, you shouldn't install this one because the game is not performance. It's going to cause some performance issues with this, and it's just to make dogfighting more enjoyable. You're going to have to uninstall it later once you get into fleet combat, but some people are really bothered by the Litcube slow rate of fire, so that is why that mod exists. All right, the next one, Marine Repairs and Training. You'll see that we have 3 folders here, so let's go to X3 Terran Conflict add-on. That is where these need to go. Scripts and T. Now, there is Plugin Manager. That is an old tool for non-Litcube mods. We don't need to use that. Anything Plugin Manager for old X3 mods is not compatible with Litcube's universe, so we don't need those. Scripts and T, we can just copy these. Remember, we don't want to drag them into folders. We want to move them to add-on. And it went ahead and put those scripts in our scripts folder already. There was nothing to replace. Okay, Marine Repairs and Training is done. Now, this is a really big one, the IR2 mod. And it's just scripts and T again. Remember, they go in add-on. It's confusing because in X3 Terran Conflict, we have scripts and T. And add-on, we also have it. Everything goes in add-on. So let's move these in. And now we have all those mods installed. It's a lot more complicated than using a mod loader, I know, but now we have all of those installed. So now that it's all installed, you should be perfectly good to go. We can go back to Terran Conflict. Let's make a shortcut. And let's call this Star Wars LU. And let's put this on our desktop. And now this folder, Star Wars LU mod, it doesn't matter where we put it. Let's throw it on our C drive somewhere where it's out of sight, because we don't need to have this on the desktop. And now that we have the shortcut, let's go ahead and get started in the game, and I'll go over how to just get everything set up very basically. Okay, so before we even get started, we need to make sure that those scripts are installed correctly. So let's just hop into a new game as Rebel Smuggler real quick. We need to make sure that the scripts show up in our menus and that everything is installed correctly. Okay, so first things first, we can immediately see if we hit R to open our property menu, the Topaz, oh my gosh, this is, please don't play with Topaz, but the Topaz GUI has installed. Now remember, we can change this at any time with that Litcube GUI installer that we held on to for any of Litcube or TrixX's GUI styles. So you can test all of those even after. So even after we've installed everything, you can still go back and use that GUI installer to change this. But the Topaz worked. Now if we use right click, we can fire our guns. You can see with this high rate of fire that the vanilla combat balance has installed correctly. Now remember, please only install this if the dogfighting bothers you without it, because those slow lasers are there for a reason with the standard combat balance. And that's just because it will cause major performance issues in the massive fleet battles that Litcube is known for. So this will be good early game when you're just going around and you're a fighter killing a bunch of enemies for money, you know, just small scale, but you'll eventually probably need to uninstall this and go back to the slow lasers of Litcube eventually. But that's installed. Let's check satellite monitoring. So hit escape. Let's go to controls. Let's go to interface, go to the bottom. So this extension section of the interface menu is where all of your mod commands are, so things from mods such as Litcube and satellite monitoring. You'll see that this right here, satellite monitoring, it shows up. This won't be here if you didn't install it correctly. So let's set it out of control. I always make this equals, apply, and when we escape, it'll say save to current profile, custom controls, and say yes. Your key binding profile, remember that Documents Egosoft X3AP folder? That's where it saves the key binding profile as well. So that's another reason why you can't use the same X3AP folder in Documents Egosoft for multiple game installs, because if you try to load vanilla now using the Star Wars X3AP folder, these commands don't exist and your control profile will be messed up. So remember to manage your save games. Again, if you're only playing Star Wars OU, you don't have to do that. So let's hit that button. Well, let's put a satellite out first. So hit F to open your cargo bay. we start with one advanced satellite. Let's eject it, and what that does is it just reveals the whole map for a sector. Let's hit our satellite monitoring menu, and here we go. We hit the hotkey to get here. So our one sector has, this is the satellite info, so that worked. I'm not going to cover what the mod, like how to use these mods, just making sure they work. The next one is marine repairs and training. We go to interface again. You'll see that Marines repair target. This won't be here if we didn't have that mod installed. And Marines repair and training is a popular mod that lets Marines on board your ship act as a repair crew to repair that ship over time out of combat. And if they're on a carrier, they can repair the ships docked in the hangar as well, like the fighters. It's a pretty neat little mod. So that is working as well. Let's make sure it's enabled. So if we hit escape, there are some mods are like plugins. They need to be enabled and running in the background. They're not just commands. Marine repairs and training is one of them. So if we go to gameplay and we go to artificial life settings, you'll see that Marines repairs and training MRT is on. And this is all good. This is all good. So the last thing is improve races 2, which is the big one. So that one actually requires you to save and reload the game. So hit Shift S. Let's save in slot 1. Give it a second. Hit Shift Q to quit. Hit yes. Let's reload that game and let's make sure that Improve Races 2 is working. So continue our game in Rebel Alliance. Oh, and here's another thing. If you guys have some good screenshots like this, send them to me on the Discord, as long as they're 1920 by 1080, and we can put those in the game as your own custom loading screen. There's no limit to how many of these I can add, so if you guys have good screenshots, hit me up. Okay, so let's check out Improve Races 2. So, pretty sure there's going to be a control for it. In interface, here it is, Improve Races. So let's add a control, let's make it, I don't know, Shift G. Save our profile, Shift G. Here is the Improved Races main interface. So on the config menu, now remember what the Discord said. Improved Cock and Improved Xenon do not work with Star Wars LU. Do not use those. But you can, this is all of the options for Improved Races 2. You can configure it here. Now, know that Star Wars LU was not designed for Improved Races 2, neither was Litcube, but I've heard it works very nicely from a bunch of different people, and it can really add in a bunch of different like craziness and chaos and life to your universe, because Litcube's universe is just a sandbox. There isn't really much going on. This makes all the races, the different factions, send fleets after one another, and it can cause some mayhem. So this is a mod that I don't recommend for your first playthrough, but you can leave it installed and just leave it disabled until you're ready to turn it on. Because you can turn it on at any time and turn it off at any time. Okay, so I think everything is installed. There will be a second video that I'm going to put out that is going to cover the very bare basics of getting started. How do I even move my ship? How do I do the basic controls? How do I even get a mission from an NPC? What am I supposed to be doing at the start of the game? How do I even make money? There's many ways to do all of those things. And please keep an eye out for that video if this is your first time playing X3, because this game is absolutely, it can be overwhelming. There are so many menus, there are so many options, and so many unintuitive ways to do key gameplay things. So keep an eye out for that, but your game is fully installed correctly and you should be good to go.